Hi guys, Ted Simpson here, certified Bob Ross instructor, and I am going to do a crazy oval scene today, based off of one of Bob's masterpieces, of course. And so I've got my 16 by 20 canvas, and I cut out an oval shape out of some high strength vinyl. This is some stuff here that I got online, probably guess where, right? And it's already, the canvas is already prepped, you know, with some white gesso right out of the package. But what I'm doing here is I got this edger tool, and it's got this removable pad, and I've got my Bob Ross black gesso here, and I'm just taking a little bit of it, and we're going to coat the bottom of the canvas here. Let's just say, ooh, well, something about like that. And I like to brush inward with this pad. That way it helps keep the gesso from sneaking under the vinyl here. So I'm just trying to get a coating, something like that, and leaving a bit here for the sky. We want to have a sky today, so I'm just trying to figure out roughly where my dark forest scene is going to be, and it's really up to you, but right now that's all I'm looking for. Give it a few pulls to smooth things out. And there we go. Now, I put my padded black gesso edger tool into a freezer bag with a couple of basic baby wipes, and that keeps the gesso from drying out. And when I mean it keeps it from drying out, I'm serious. Normally this would dry in a couple of 20 minutes or so, but this Ziploc, whoops, brand notice, I don't get a commission. This actually will keep this pad dry for weeks, months, if you change out the baby wipe once in a while. As long as you keep it sealed, it will stay dry for a long time. Long time. So, there we go. And what we're going to do is, with a series of tools here, basic paper towel, you could use a sponge. I've got my white, gray, and black gesso. I'm going to first take just a little bit of paper towel and blot, blot, blot a little bit of this black gesso and just make a little edge here of bushes and foliage, who knows, some little leafy patterns, just to get something kind of worked up in there. We don't really care. Okay, now let's take an older, kind of cruddy, end of its life liner brush. Normally we don't, we use natural hair brushes with our gesso and stuff, but today it's okay. And I've got my different gessos worked in here, and I'm going to thin some of that gesso down with my liner brush. Roll that brush between my fingers, and let's make some branches and trees and trunks and all sorts of stuff. Just some little indications of trees. Ooh, there we go. And Bob had all this done prior to the camera turning on here, so through the magic of editing, I will do the same thing. I'm gonna play around here, get some trunks and trees in there, and then let all this dry for about 20 minutes or so. I'll go have lunch, come back, and then we'll do all the oil work, glazes, and all sorts of things. This is a great exercise here in practicing with your liner brush, making all sorts of trees. And you may notice here that when I'm pushing, bend those bristles, you'll get some wider effects. And of course we want the wider ones at the bottom, the narrow branches, as we work our way out. How many of these you want to put in, it's up to you. But we're going to try to get that, that little sense of the sun burning its way through the forest. We're trying to go for that effect. So that's why I'm using all black gesso here. But I'm going to switch. Want to play around. All sorts of different things. All sorts of different trees. Now, the cool thing is, there's a couple different ways you can do this, and some people have more luck one way than the other. So what I like to do is I like to push firm. Look at that, those bristles are bent like 90 degrees as I'm going up. And then as I go up, I just lighten my touch so it gets narrower as it goes up. I do that with the branches as well. Pushing firm at first and lightening my touch. The other way, well, it's the reverse. You start out very, very light, and then you push in as you go down, and that makes it wider as you go. One of these is going to work better for you than the other. You got to figure out which. And of course, when you're doing this, you gotta play around and thin down your paints to get it to flow easier, or use a little thicker stuff just so that it stays nice and dark. When you're messing around with this liner brush, make sure Can't even talk today. Make sure you clean your brush once in a while. Just stop and really clean out the whole brush with some water, and then go back at it. You can tell I'm trying to figure out which one's going to work for me. And as I tell my students, try not to get too fiddly with it. Try not to get over concerned with any particular branch. You know, when we put on our oil colors, a lot of this is just going to get burned away by that bright sun coming through, you know? Some of these branches will just sort of disappear into the scene. So if you are all fiddly with it, you know, you realize you didn't have to be. So now what I like to do with my brush here is miss a few times. Just lightly, lightly, lightly go up till you feel it barely touching. Adds all these little background things in. I don't know why I'm whispering. Just that's how light I want to mess with it, you know? Just lightly lift. Put in all sorts of these little things. Come back. Load your brush. Very lightly put in all this cool little stuff here. Alright. Now, I'm going to switch right over and I'm going to thin down a little bit of gray gesso. Making a little puddle here. Work that color in. Find the consistency that works here. The thicker stuff doesn't really flow off the brush, so I'm thinning down. Don't want it too watery. You got to find that happy middle ground. And maybe put in some little gray things here and there as we're moving away from the light. Things might get a little lighter, because those black ones are very silhouetted against the light. There we go. Bob did this to great effect in a number of paintings. The golden rays of sunlight is a favorite of mine and many people. And there's a few others here where he plays around with the gessos. Now, I'm going to use my white gesso. Maybe put a couple of bright ones silhouetted against the dark ones. It's up to you. Doesn't really show up so much, of course, because of the white background, but if you painted more of this black, you could see a little bit more of the white ones in the dark areas. Let's see about putting a tree or two right there. Just some happy little sticks and twigs. All sorts of fun stuff. All right, I think that did it. Now, I'm really tapping that brush out, getting all that water out. Set that brush aside, wait for it to dry. Then what I'm going to do is coat it with some Vaseline or some cleaning material, sort of reimagine that brush back to an oil painting brush. Now, let's go crazy here. I'll do this for you. Normally you can just take, and I think Bob just took a napkin, crunch it up, paper towel. Oop, my black gesso got contaminated. So let's get my black gesso out here. And I got another waxed plate here. Actually, looks like it's a bowl. and my sponge, and I'm going to dab some color into that sponge and get a lot of it off. Find the interesting spot on the sponge. You can see I'm wearing gloves here too. And let's just sponge some foliage in here. Try to figure out where these little clumps are living. All these leaf effects here and there. Leave some open, leave some nice and covered. Whatever works for you. I think they're a little darker at the top myself, but leaving some open spots here and there. And then I'm going to clean up this bottom a little bit. Make it look a little more bushy and foliage at the bottom. There we go. All right, folks. I think that'll do it for now. And while I go rinse out my brush and rinse out my sponge, we'll let this dry for a few moments, and I will be back. Hello, welcome back. It took me quite a bit longer than a few minutes, but we are back. I did what I said here. I went out and go have some lunch and ran out to the store, and I come back and our power was completely out. And it took a couple 3 hours for it to come back. So, all I could think of is you guys. What am I gonna do? But mainly I was thinking about my basement, and hopefully it wasn't going to flood. Then I thought of you guys. The basement flooded. Well, that would be not the first time. So, that's all dry now. We're ready to go, and I'm just putting on my thin coat of liquid clear all the way around. I got it pretty heavy right here, so I just keep picking some up and moving it over. Just kind of grinding it in, bringing it inward. Again, don't want it to sneak under this vinyl, but this is some pretty strong vinyl, it seems. Don't seem to have any issues with it detaching. Alright, well, just to be on the safe side, let's clean the excess off my brush. And then, this paper towel has a little bit of water in it. Let me get the other side here. And I'm just going to give this a wipe. Now, Bob did have some gessoed little stones here with the black and gray gesso. But I'm not doing that on mine. In case you were wondering, in case you noticed, I'm planning this for a class. I don't know if I'll do the oval or not. Probably. Why not? And just to do all that stonework with old filbert brushes. I just don't want to take that on in a classroom setting, but when you guys are playing around at home, feel free to give that a try. Bob goes over it fairly well, and we'll put maybe some the one-stroke rocks on this one. So, just crisscrossing. Look at that phthalo blue. Boy, that really just changes the whole thing, doesn't it? Now, notice I start a little down here, a little up here, and then when I'm running out of paint, that's when I just did this last little bit. I'm going to clean out my brush as best I can here. Any final softening, I want it to be a little bit lighter right there. Now, of course, if we really wanted to, we could go over it with the titanium white. You know what? Why not? Let's do that. So, I'm just going to make this a little bolder. And let's see here. Why the heck not? Why wouldn't I? Put the white out. Might as well use it, right? So I'm going to pull a little bit of this titanium white through the old 1-inch brush. And let's just say it's right here. Get that zinging light, maybe. Working my way out. It'll pick up a little bit of that blue. Oh my gosh, I really like that. I got that blue in there. Gotta really clean it out if you want to go back and make this maybe even a little brighter. Let me bring it out a little bit. There we go. I like that. Good plan. Took about 2 seconds. Why not? So, Bob started out here with the old knife and took a little bit of the Van Dyke brown, and he created a little back cliff little thing here, a little rock back here. And then he took a little bit of the titanium white and a touch of, ooh, not that color, a touch of the midnight black. Making a gray tone here. Maybe even a tinge of the brown. Maybe even a touch of the blue. Play around until you get, I sort of took the marble away, didn't I? I'll play around with this and get that marbled again. Cut off a little roll of paint there. And let's get a little thing going there. I don't like it. Little indication there. Sometimes I'll take a little bit more of the white, lighten this up a little. Look at that, a little bit lighter than my highlight. Add just a tinge of highlight to the highlight. There goes. That's what I was looking for. All right. Here comes trouble. Take my fan brush and we're going to go into a little bit of the liquid clear. You could use liquid white to thin this stuff down. Today I'm just playing with the liquid white. Now this particular batch of liquid white's a little on the thick side. It's not that old stuff I used a painting or two ago. But it's just fresh out of the tube. It's perfect for mountains, you know. But to make it flow like water, it's going to need to help it along a little bit. Liquid clear does the trick. And let's see what we got here. Come in here and just you know what I almost forgot to do before I do too much else. What was I thinking? Gotta put a little blue in here. Just gonna help everything. Especially down here in the water. Gotta have some blue in our water. Can't believe I forgot, but boy, it doesn't take much for me to remember. You could tell right away when there's not enough there. Let's get some right there, just to be on the safe side. There we go. Okay. Oh my Lord. Maybe a little more blue in my waterfall here. Over and down. Now you can do this a couple of times. maybe even a few. But at some point, it's going to be too much. You start to lose all these little shadows and things happening here. I think that's about it. Boy, that was a lot of thin paint just to do a few little waterfall dillies there. And you see here we overlapped it. Now I would come back with the palette knife and maybe just using the short side of this palette knife. Let's put a little cliff overhanging the close side of the falls. Something like that. Just making a fairly clean line here. Now this one here has a little bit more of a top to it, a little area maybe we could stand and some brave soul can cliff dive off of there. So let's come in here and just give a little indication of a little flat plane perhaps. Maybe even a little brighter. Get that little highlight up there. And then, let's just see, no paint on the knife, let's just see if I can't just bring a little down. Nope, gonna need just a touch on the knife. Trying to create that vertical look. Let's see, did that work? Kinda, sorta. There we go. Maybe just a little bright one right there, just to zing it on a couple of spots. Cool, look at that. Now down here at the bottom, I wonder, have a little touch of that still in my brush. Let's put a little mist at the bottom here. Bob used the soft blender brush for this. I just don't have one at the ready. I just decided this brush had a little bit of white in it from the sky. Just enough here to play around with and create some little splash. And when I just put in that little bit of blue as my undercolor, it'll mix in here and there. Clean out my brush a little bit and then tap the bottom here, let it work into that blue, and just let it get softer and softer as we move away from the bottom of the waterfall. Look at that, we can create all sorts of mists there. Playing around there, add in a couple of extra little bright things. And tap some of it away. Then you can add a couple little layers of mist if you really want to. Clean that brush and brush some of it away. Just by tapping. Calm it down just by tapping. There we go. A little bit of mist hanging out there. And if this helps you here, you can take your brush and just with a touch of this paint, we can sort of put a little indication of where this water is going to pool as it moves forward. We'll worry about the rest later. But what I got to do, I got to mix up a good old batch of color. So, I already have some mountain mix laid out here. I love that super dark stuff. So I got some mountain mix. I'm going to add some Sap Green to it. And maybe a little bit of that Van Dyke Brown. Give us all those dark, dark green shadows. Okay. Now, Bob used the 1-inch brush to create all these effects. So, let me give my 1-inch brush a little clean. I've got my bucket of thinner here, and I'm just going to swish that brush I used for the waterfall splashes. Oop, there goes my light. There goes my everything. Okay, so let's see about is that one? That's going to be the one. We're going to go into plenty of this paint. Get some in there, give it that little wiggle and a jiggle, back and forth, load full of color. Start to collapse those bristles together. And let's just make a tree. Let's see, where are we going here? Oh my gosh, we're going way up here, aren't we? Big old tree. Kind of overhanging everything. It's coming down, and maybe there's some bushes here at our ground level. And, oh gosh, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. It's just some dark color, just so we have something to make shadows here. And maybe there's a little outcropping of land right here. I know it's hard to see. It'll make sense when we do the highlights. And same thing over here. We're going to have a big old leafy tree. You know, I know Bob's done this before, but we don't even necessarily need all this shadow. Of course, we like to see it up in the sky, but all this dark stuff down here, you don't really need all that much dark color, because we can just bring it all out with the highlight. So I'm not going to worry too much about it, even leaving some little dark gesso here. And then down here, same thing, we're going to have some land before we get to the water. So we got a little outcropping, a little peninsula coming out from here. This one here comes out a little further. And we got some open water here if we like. And we can play around with it. But look how that just starts to push that waterfall back by overlapping little bits. Overlapping, of course, that rocky formation there. Got to get that part covered for it to make sense. There we go. Just a little there. Maybe a taller bush. Who knows? That was simple. Clean out my brush here. This one goes fast. That's what's great about this in a class, is we get to play around with all those gesso trees, wait for it to dry, which takes up a little time. But the rest of the painting goes really, really, really fast. Okay, get just a little bit of the liquid clear. And I'm going to thin this yellow down. It doesn't need too much thinning. This stuff is nice and soft right out of the tube. A little bit of the green, maybe even a touch of black. Play around with it until we find a color that we like. That black really dulls it down. Ooh, there it is. Look how dull that gets. Not so bright. Getting lots of color worked in. See that? Nice chiseled wedge-like shape there. Now Bob does this with the corner of the brush. He comes in here and he just does a section, reloads. Adds in the highlights and just keeps it moving. Maybe this part here is just going to be a little bit brighter. There we go. And all these different sections here, you just change the flavor a little bit, as Bob likes to say. There's the edge of the oval here. I just got to play around with. And any parts here you want to sparkle up, add a little bit. Okay, now sometimes here you just got to stop and remake your little working pile here. There we go. Not even worrying about over mixing anything. And put one of these little entities in. Move on to the next one. And we got this little bush thing happening here, so let's create that little one. Leaving little dark areas in between our layers. And we got a whole nother tree coming down over here. All different things happen in this crazy forest. Bringing down some paint, maybe even just a hint of the blue. Let's change that color up completely different. That helps create the illusion of different things happening here. Playing with angles, different pressures, all this crazy growth happening in this forest. We don't really know what's going on. There we go. I tell you what, I went almost down. Just started doing the grass right over the grass area. So let's just change it up. Okay, a little brighter, a little less black perhaps, just a little bit more of the sap green. Really get this up on the edge of that chisel. And let's see about turning this into a little bit of grass. Just touch, 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 touch. How'd that turn out? Looks a little flat to me. Now if I come in here with just a little bit of the brighter yellow, let's see about sparkling a little up here. There we go. Little extra on that bit. All right, back to our colors here. Got this whole other tree to do. Let's play around with this one. Let's make this one a little different. A little different shape to it. Sometimes we can do that just by switching to a completely different brush. But why bother? Just lightening up my touch as I move away. It automatically gets darker and darker. Maybe we got a little bit of a overhang happening here. Just changed my mind, just like that. Those big old hangy downs. That's kind of fun. Man, all that, like, I don't know if it's ivy or vines. But I like it. Maybe a little bit brighter. Let's get a touch of that white in there. What the heck? Some of that blue and white just to sparkle it, really brighten it up. Get some up on the tips of the bristles and just in a few spots here. If I can do this right, just a couple of spots, sparkle it even more. Ooh, there we go. What the heck? I think it works. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my yellow and green. Just yellow and green. Touch of the black. And we got to put in our little bit of grass, a little bit of flat grass here. There we go. And a little sparkler right there. I think a little too much sparkle. Let me just calm that down a little. Good deal. All right, let's come back here. I still have plenty of this Van Dyke brown. Maybe we'll just make a little bit of some earth coming down here, a little bit of dirt, something like that. Get some there, and maybe we'll have a little bit of a cliff edge here. All right, yeah, let's do that. Let's pull it down a slightly different angle. As long as it's relatively dark, it's gonna look right. Now, let's take that little bit of gray that we made, touch of that Van Dyke brown in it, just for flavor. There we go. Now, let's get our little roll of color, and let's highlight this one, just barely touching. Highlight on the cliff edge here. Then with a clean knife, let's see if we can calm this down a little. There we go. So let's see here. Got some white, and I'm going to get just a little bit of that liquid clear, thin this down. Again, liquid white works just as well to thin down your titanium white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have just a little indication, just starting to here, get some water, start to move in this. Coming from the mist. Might be some here as well. Sort of scratching this sideways here. I don't know, this is fun. I like this effect. You can just keep rubbing it, and it just starts to pick up some of that blue color. And I know here, you've seen this happen before here, where Bob will take the brush and just sort of push up here and there, create some little splash effect. Not too much. I don't want to overwhelm it. But in a couple of spots, like right around the edges of our earth here, our land, a little bit of splashes, and we can just bring this out just a little bit. Something like that. Isn't that something? Now, what I am going to do, I'm going to come back to my highlight color here. And in just a couple of spots, we want to maybe let that overhang the rocks a little bit. Really makes it look like this grass is trying to reach the water, growing right on over the earth there. Just a couple of spots. Because it's thinner, it should stick pretty easily. And there we go. Looks like we got ourselves a finished painting. And you know, a lot of things we can do here. If you don't like it, you know, there's a lot of things you can change, especially here at the end. You know, I was talking about those little like highlights to the highlight. If you think they need a little more variation, I come up here and with slightly thinner paint, you can touch a few of these that are towards the light. Give them just a little more oomph on the upper edge. See that? These are all very kind of monochromatic now that I'm looking at it, so just a couple little sparklers add a little dimension to these bushes. These ones over here, I kind of like them. I don't think they need too much, but if you're feeling it, ahead and drop something in. Ooh, you could do that all day and just keep making it different and different, you know? But at one point we do have to abandon the painting and say it's done for now. think that time is here. So with just a little bit of, oh, you know what? I probably shouldn't use paint thinner because of all that liquid clear. The paint thinner and the liquid clear don't like each other so much, so I'm just going to thin down a little bit of this stuff I use for the water here. Give it a quick little signature. Ooh, changed my signature a little there. There we go. We got to have the big reveal. So let me put my palette down here. Now I pulled the tape, and here we go. Oh, got some tape around the outside as well. Kaboom! There is our finished work. Now I'll step back a little bit. Very, very nice. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and feel free to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Maybe.